So
we do, and so I think, but that it makes it a little trickier, especially for people that maybe don't have a lot of fusing experience, or if you're using a kiln that's got like a slumping program, right? We think, wow, well, that should work for everything we're ever going to do, including draping, but it doesn't, right? So that's why we thought we would revisit this. We are going to talk about temperatures, and we'll try to get a little specific. I think we have some programs for some of the things that we're showing, that some firing schedules for those that we'll make available at some point. Well, glass starts getting soft right around 1100. So, I mean, that is when you should start looking, right? I mean, even if you think, oh, I'm going to go to 1225, or I'm going to 1250, I mean, you should really start looking at 1100. And I know for me, I just set a timer on my phone. You know, I do the math. If I'm going 200 degrees an hour to 1,000 or whatever, I know that's going to take 5 hours, and then I'll just, set my phone and then come back and peek at it. Draping, though, like, we were just saying, those pretty much is this simple thing, right? So you come here, get the glass soft, hot, get it hot enough so it gets soft, and then it forms over this. This is a stainless steel floral former, it's called, right? Val made this one here, and they're very similar in size, right? But I can bet you they're not the same temperature, right? I mean, for a variety of reasons, but. So it's one reason why, again, it's hard to get just a firing schedule. You might be able to figure it out for just this piece, and every time you made this piece look exactly like this, you might be able to have a firing schedule. But if you change one thing on it, add more frid, change the color, 2 layers instead of 1 layer, as you were pointing out.
Depending on the thickness of the glass and what you've maybe done into the glass could affect how it drapes. So this one draped quite evenly. I mean, really did.
That's why.
And then the 4 colored squares were put in, and then the blue, it was all pieced together. Yep. And so, but it's very balanced in weight. So that's one thing, if you want it to drape nice and evenly, you don't want to just put a corner over here of a second layer and not over here. That'll affect how it drapes. So, I mean, or maybe you want to do
some frid on one of them, right? Mm-hmm. Or a little pre-cut piece of glass, right? Designed on there. That's going to be heavier. That side's going to fall first, right?
You do have to prepare it. Roy and I mostly use the paper, the thin fire paper. We find that works really well, but you can spray them with the boron nitride if you happen to have casting molds where you're using that spray and already have it, then that's also fine. It gets a little messy, because it's always coming off on your hands.
That's what I don't like about it. So this is a Bullseye brand only because I like it because it's the thinnest, right? So a real thin one and real nice and smooth. And all I do is I cut the paper. I don't know how well you can see this, but I cut it a hair bigger, like maybe, a quarter of an inch on each side, bigger than what I'm trying to do. Just a tiny bit. And then that goes onto the floral former. I'm going to move that for a second. And then, so when this falls, it takes the paper with it, and the paper acts as a barrier between the glass and the stainless steel.
Peaking, and that was another comment from someone, was that we didn't explain what peaking is. And I use the term peaking. I think you do too.
I do too. I use the same word.
And I use it intentionally because it's not gawking. I mean, it's not throwing the lid open and gawking down in there. It's peeking. It literally is, down here, you don't get too close, but and just lift it a little bit, just enough so you see what's happening. You don't have to study it, because that sometimes is my problem. I peek too many times, and then that just adds to the length of time that I'm having to babysit it, right?
Yeah, peaking it, again, so I mentioned just a little while ago, glass starts getting soft around 1100, right? So there's no reason to look before 1100. In fact, we would recommend, right, don't look before 1100. If people are always like, well, aren't I going to thermal shock my glass? I've been doing this a long time, like a really long time. Right. I've never thermal shocked a piece of glass by peaking, as Val pointed out, into a kiln. So, and it really is just seconds, right?
But we always are over 1,000 degrees.
Yeah, we're always over 1,000 degrees.
Before we peak, before
we start peaking, right? Let's talk about the heating. So to get them to fall evenly, right, or try to attempt to get them to fall more evenly, we recommend going at a slower ramp speed. So, Val and I usually go 200 degrees an hour, but I have a piece here that I think probably 150 degrees is probably actually better. So when you go too fast, things fall quicker. and then they stretch and they do other things that you might not want them to. So, and plus when they're falling slower, it gives you more time to, as you're peeking at this. And a lot of times, I'm peeking every 15 minutes, or every 10 minutes, again, depending on what it's doing, to try to make a decision on, when do I want to shut it off? When, what does it look like?
Yeah, in mine, my schedule that I wrote down last night is one of the other questions I guess we weren't clear about was when we talked about flash venting. So when you see what you like, here's, sometimes people use this, reference to baking cookies. When you bake cookies, you don't just, when the timer goes off, you don't just turn the oven off and walk away, and so there's this thing called carryover heat, and it also happens in our kilns, right? So we're trying to factor that into what's happening, but what we are doing when we see exactly what we want and we shut the kiln off, we're going to vent that hot air out of the kiln, and we're going to try to get it down below the temperature that will stop it moving.
We flash vented it down, right? And then on this case, we flash vented it down to, it was under 1200, so maybe about 1150 or so. And then what we do is skip to the next segment, which is the annealing segment, right? And that's probably, again, one of the most important things. For those of you that aren't real familiar with annealing, you want to think of annealing as being like a stress reliever. It is equalizing the temperature throughout that whole mass of glass. And so you can imagine that, when glass has a weird shape to it like this, and it's sitting on some stainless steel form, it's going to cool down very unevenly. And so all we're trying to do is make sure that all parts of that, all the colors are the same temperature, the shape's the same temperature. That's what annealing is. And so the weirder the shape, you can see the longer it's going to take to do that. Or again, what's also really important is the thicker that it is, the longer that's going to take. And so as Val was pointing out, this is a single layer of glass. So, I'm with you. I think an hour probably would be plenty on that type of thing, right? This is tricky, right? I know we get this question like almost on a monthly basis. It seems like somebody says, I've got this fluoroformer. What size do I make it? I would literally just measure it, right?
Yeah.
And this is one reason why you want something relatively flexible. So it comes around it's coming in at 11 inches. And so then what I do is I subtract an inch from that. So the reason why is if I made something that was exactly 11 inches, it's going to hit the shelf. Oh, which is something we didn't talk about either. Sorry, we'll talk about it. It's going to hit the shelf. And more than likely, when you're doing these, you don't want the tips, hitting the shelves,
but
right?
Sometimes they're cute when they do.
I know, sometimes
you
they're
can't really
cool,
control it.
But if you're trying to avoid it, which most people are, then I just subtract an inch. So now I have 10 inches that I'm working with, right? Now here's a slightly confusing part when you're doing squares, because I've dealt with a few customers before. So this is a 7-inch square, right? So sometimes people think, well, I measured 10 inches, I could do a 10-inch square. You have to measure your square from corner to corner, right? So here's some geometry, right? So you can't just pick a 10-inch square because it'll be way too big, right? So, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? We all know that, right? All of us. So, drop rings, right?
Yeah, we'll do drop rings.
Yeah, so drop rings. I have one here. Actually, it was so interesting because, we were talking about doing this, and I just recently taught a class this past Sunday. The class is called The Secrets of Slumping. So, which I can't really tell you because,
they're secret.
It's a secret. So we have this pretty large drop ring here. And so the way this works is you have to set this on kiln posts, right? So first we fused a circle, and then we set this up on, and I asked him, well, how far do you want to drop it? And he's like, 6 inches. And I was like, okay, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can't do that. Usually what I do is, again, I'm watching these when I'm doing this. And if I see it looks like it's not going to make the 6 inches. And what I mean by that is I'm looking at a couple of visual things. One would be if I see it starting to pull off the sides, right? Because that's what happens with drop rings a lot of times is the glass wants to literally just pull off. And especially this one is, again, if you notice, it's got a really big hole in the middle, right? So there's not a lot of glass grabbing this rim. So it's pretty easy to pull off. And it's one of the reasons why Val and I have already mentioned before that when you're ramping up, you should go at a slow speed because then the glass will fall slowly. So I was going 200 degrees an hour up to temperature. And I do have the firing schedule, so if you guys want this one, I can give you this one. 200 degrees up to temperature. And then
what was temperature?
Oh, the temperature was really pretty low, to be honest. So it was 1,200 degrees, and it was at that temperature for 6 hours.
Yeah.
But then we wanted to show you another one real quick. So we have these. So this is a set that we sell here at Delphi, made by Wardell. So it's a drop ring right here on the top. This is a drop ring, and then the glass will fall through the hole, and then it catches the foot, and the foot then is inside this.
I've got this one too. So
Oh yeah. Val's
it
got
has
one
a
that's
foot
hasn't
in
been
it.
done yet. And then this is, and it catches the foot. So which makes this one even trickier is that, I mean, you got to get hot enough. I mean, just getting hot enough to get the glass to drop through the hole is not good enough, because we have to get the glass hot enough to be like a tack fuse where it's going to grab the foot. And so that's the part that got pretty tricky. I know on this one, I went up to 1,300 degrees. Wow, I think that's it. Well, that's everything
That's
Val
all
and I
I
know
got.
about draping.
Yep. Let us know if we missed something. You know,
Oh, people
I'm
will.
sure.
That's good. And then, as always, if you have any kind of ideas about what you would like us to do next time, I mean, we're always open for ideas, right? I think we got a bunch of ideas coming, but we're always eager for that. So,
Yep. So,
well, thanks for joining
yeah,
us today,
thanks.
and
We'll
we'll
see you
see you
next
guys
time.
next time.